Hello, my name is Dr. Courtney Ray, and I am the president of the Society for Black Neuropsychology, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the second installment of our match seminars. Today, we are going to be talking about postdoc fellowship matches and what to do if you were not matched during the time when there was the postdoc fellowship match. We have some experts here who will be answering your questions about the match process, helping you to navigate sort of the emotional aspects of the match, and helping you to see what you can do in order to find a match if you haven't been matched yet. If you are watching us live on YouTube, you already know our YouTube page exists. If you're watching us on our web page on Facebook, then you know that Facebook exists. I want you, if you're on YouTube, to also know about our Facebook, and if you're on Facebook, also know about our YouTube. We want you to join us on Facebook, also like, subscribe, and share so that other people will be able to see this webinar, and also that you'll be able to be notified whenever there are important videos that we put up that might be of interest to you. Right now, I'm going to introduce our moderators for this evening. And when you have a question or a comment, please feel free to write those things in the chat in Facebook or on YouTube. Or if you'd like to submit those questions anonymously, please do so by sending an email to soblackneuro@gmail.com. That's SOBLACKNEURO@gmail.com. That's the Society for Black Neuropsychology email address. And we will be reading any questions that we get from there live on our broadcast this evening. Right now, without any further ado, I'd like to bring up our two moderators for this evening. We have Rosalia Costello and Kendra Anderson. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Oh.
And so Rosalia Costello is representing ANTS, with whom SBN is partnering to bring you this series of webinars. And Kendra Anderson is our executive secretary of SBN. And I will allow them to introduce themselves this evening.
Great.
Go ahead, Kendra.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ray. So yes, I am Dr. Kendra Anderson, and I am an assistant professor and clinical neuropsychologist in the Lewis A. Fallis, MD, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at McGovern Medical School. And I'll be moderating tonight, representing SBN.
All right. And Dr. Rosalia Costello.
Yes, thank you. I am Dr. Rosalia Costello. I'm currently a first-year fellow at Baylor College of Medicine / Texas Children's Hospital in pediatric neuropsychology, and I am the Equity and Inclusion Officer for ANST. So here moderating tonight, representing ANST.
All right. So Dr. Anderson and Dr. Costello, I will allow you to take it away from here.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ray.
Thank you. Okay. So I think we'd like to introduce our panelists. I will start. So Dr. Will McBride will be one of our panelists today. He is currently a second-year fellow at the University of Virginia Medical Center in Charlottesville, Virginia, and is an executive committee member for the Society for Black Neuropsychology. And then, hello. We'll also be introducing Dr. Sakina Butt. So she is board certified in clinical neuropsychology with the subspecialty designation in pediatric neuropsychology. She completed her doctoral degree at Florida School of Professional Psychology in 2008. She completed an APA accredited doctoral psychology internship and postdoctoral psychology fellowship at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine in 2011. She serves as a general member of the AAPPCN Board of Directors and as the Neuropsychology Fellowship Training Director for an AAPPCN member program. She says, I am passionate about training and the next generation of neuropsychologists through our program. I believe in a strong commitment to training to uphold the protection of the public and the integrity of neuropsychology.
Thank you so much. I'll be introducing Dr. Dwayne Dede. Dr. Dede is a clinical professor in the Department of Clinical and Health Psychology and co-director of the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Clinic at the University of Florida. He is currently the chair of the Health Equity, Anti-Racism, and Diversity Committee in the CHF department at the University of Florida. He has served as the chairman of Division 40 Committee on Ethnic Minority Affairs, as well as a delegate for the National Conference on Postdoctoral Fellowship Training in Professional Psychology. Clinically, Dr. Dede evaluates patients with a variety of CNS disorders, as well as provides psychotherapy. He's also heavily involved in the training of neuropsychology graduate students and interns. Dr. Dede's research interests include neuropsychological consequences of mild traumatic brain injury, adult learning disability, and the family dynamics of caregivers of various neurologically compromised populations. Dr. Amelia Nelson-Schiess is an assistant professor and chief of the Neuropsychology Division within the Department of Neurological Sciences at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. She is also the training director for the UNMC Neuropsychology Postdoctoral Fellowship. She completed her PhD at the University of Tulsa in 2011 and her postdoctoral training in clinical neuropsychology at the Milwaukee VA Medical Center in 2013. She is a board certified neuropsychologist through the American Board of Professional Psychology and a member of the American Academy of Clinical Neuropsychology, the International Neuropsychological Society, the National Academy of Neuropsychology, and the American Psychological Association, as well as APA's Division 40 Society for Clinical Neuropsychology. Her primary areas of specialty and interest include conducting neuropsychological evaluations to assist with differential diagnosis of memory and movement disorders, and educating patients and their caregivers on compensating and coping with cognitive and emotional changes that may result from neurological disease or injury. And then last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Tricia Williams. Dr. Williams is a Canadian clinical neuropsychologist who works at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, Ontario. She is the co-chair of the AACC Board Certification Promotion Committee, dedicated to helping students and neuropsychologists along the path to board certification. Wow, what a lineup we have for you all. Thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to have such an esteemed board panel for our talk today. Dr. Costello, if you'd like to lead us off.
Absolutely. So I think we want to start by acknowledging, that not matching for fellowship can be very stressful, especially for high achieving graduate students who have done a lot to get to this point. And so we want to start by talking a little bit about the emotional aspects of this time. So maybe starting with Dr. McBride, but if anyone would like to chime in, please feel free to do so. So in terms of the emotional aspect of not matching, how would you encourage students to process the experience, to care for their mental health during this phase? And if you were providing reassurance to a trainee who did not match, what might you say to them?
Absolutely. And I can speak to that from just my own personal experience. After internship, I did not match. So I went through that. I would say maybe the 5 stages of grief, the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I was in shock that it happened to me. And kind of thinking about that sense of invulnerability that I felt like it was stripped, that I was vulnerable. I didn't know where to turn. There was also a lot of anger towards myself, anger towards the sites. Why didn't they choose me? Those types of things. And then I began to question the path of what I was looking for and thinking, okay, should I reevaluate my goals? Is this where I need to be? And eventually, again, I came to an acceptance. So I went through those stages. And if it was not for that year I took to evaluate my goals, what I was trying to achieve, I was able to rechannel my energy. And I would love to be able to talk more and give the panelists an opportunity, but just to speak on how taking that year actually improved a lot of areas that I maybe felt weak in. So I would just suggest that don't look at this as, just the end of it, but as a stopping point to kind of reevaluate and look at what other areas you might need to work on.
Yes, thank you so much. I think it's so validating to hear that piece. Really appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure that means a lot to a lot of people right now. Did anyone else want to chime in to that question and of what you might say to trainees at this time?
I would just echo the comments that Willie made. I think it's very natural to, certainly in high achieving individuals, to feel that sense of loss, that sense of some ways shame. We're human beings. That's a natural response. And sometimes as healthcare professionals, we don't give ourselves the benefit of what advice we would tell our clients. Spend some time, get in touch with your feelings, go through those processes. They're very important. They are things that we will learn from, but then use it to energize you to move forward. You have a PhD, you have something that less than 1% of the population has, so you are already special. Let that refocus you to decide what you can do to move forward. You lean on your support system of your village, family, friends, faculty. Let them give you some feedback about maybe making yourself a stronger candidate in the future, and use resources like this to move forward.
If I can just build on what was said, I think it's so important because we're very driven as a profession, and you get to the PhD not easily, that sometimes you can drive yourself crazy in these times where it didn't work out the way we expected by trying to work harder and harder and harder, and that without taking that time of grace and regrouping can be even more detrimental. So I echo what has already been said in the importance of drawing on the support of friends, family, and mentors. And also, I guess, share that rejection throughout our careers it almost defines us in some ways, but it's sort of our reaction to it. And I'll just share personally, like I had a pretty nasty rejection from where I've now been working for the last 10 years. And it was my response to that in, reaching out to the person who was the director of that department, and that learning, and now that person has become a mentor to me. And I mean, this is years ago, but I think looking back at the moment, it was devastating, but it's sort of that reaction we have can really carve out some paths that we didn't even anticipate being on.
I would echo everything, especially the point about reaching out. I think it's so important to go through the process, as everyone has said, and really make sure that you are not cheating yourself of that opportunity to acknowledge that we're human and we are going to feel what we feel when there is a rejection, but then also reaching out to mentors. But you can also reach out to sites, especially if you feel like you're not understanding what happened. You can try to reach out to training directors of sites. It is nerve-wracking, it is stressful, but I know from experience, most sites, training directors would be happy to kind of discuss where your next steps could be. And you can look at it as an opportunity. There's not just one path to becoming a neuropsychologist. And then that is a nice reminder as well, shouldering on with the supports of those in the field who can help you get through to that next step, whatever it may be for you.
And then I'm going to follow Dr. Butt here and just mention, reiterate what so many other people have said, which is that you're not alone. Don't give up hope. There are a lot of excellent neuropsychologists out there who didn't match for fellowship on the first time around. So try to keep sight of your goals, keep those in mind, and keep moving forward.
Thank you all so much. It definitely, in summary, sounds like a time to, process some of those emotions, experience them, they're valid, really lean on support systems. We'll talk a little bit later more about mentors and how they can be supportive during this time. And then after the emotional processing piece, kind of moving on to behavioral activation and thinking about next steps, realizing that this has not invalidated all of your training, that there is very much space and a place to move forward. Thank you all, I appreciate that. And then Dr. Anderson, did you want to move on to the next question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for your feedback, and I'm sure the people will be watching this is something that they really need to hear. And Dr. Dede, I would like to mention that Dr. Dede provided a step-by-step process regarding some of the things that may be important to consider in match. And if you're interested in having that, please go ahead and put your email in the either email SBN so we can disseminate that to the people who would be interested in having that resource. So I think it may be a really good segue to just get a clear understanding of what the APSIN and the match entails. Can you all explain to applicants what exactly happens after not matching? So we understand that there are a number of sites with openings that post the openings via listservs. But for maybe Dr. Butt can get us started off. But is there a significant difference in how to manage the post-MAC for those pursuing like pediatric positions, or just what exactly happens when you don't match? Where do we go from there?
That's a really great question. Overall, I would say there's really not a specific approach, adult versus pediatrics. The posting, so if you're registered for the match, you went through and you did not match through the absent match program, there is a list of programs who also have unfilled positions. And so this happens every year. A lot of applicants are really shocked to find programs with, big names, and they have positions that have gone unfilled. So not only do applicants who are good and qualified not match every year, we also have the same issue with sites as well. So it can be a little bit of a frenzy and a frantic period. But once you get your notification of whether or not you matched or did not match, there is a window of time before you're able to engage in that post-match kind of search. So usually it's right in the match rules and they'll let you know. Typically you'll be notified during the day in the morning. And then later on that day around noon or so is when sites and or applicants can then start communicating with each other, applying, so sending out your cover letter, sending out your curriculum vitae to sites that are listed not only through the match website, but then also through listservs and communication that's going on, even if it is training director to training director. It could be through general listservs, through community information. This is just kind of a time where any support that you have will be really helpful in casting your net as wide as possible with sites that are matched for your training needs. And then typically within that time period, things can move pretty quickly. So some people can get a match later on that day. Sometimes it can happen in the next 2 days. I would say very frequently, applicants who go unmatched at first have matches within that week. And then, of course, you can go beyond that if you decide that there's nothing that's available in your geographic area, for example, or if it's just not a good fit, you can decide to take a year and then plan that year to shore up gaps in your training, plan that year to do other things before moving forward with attempting to secure a fellowship. So I would say that's the general overall approach.
Thank you so much, Dr. Butt, for clarifying that. And as you mentioned, sometimes positions are filled very quickly. What would be the best way to stay apprised of the newly funded sites that may become available maybe later in the year? What's your advice, and anyone else who would like to chime in, on how to stay apprised of those new positions and kind of that decision point between, taking that year or looking for something maybe later on in the year?
I think the general listservs being part of professional memberships, and then, as we said before, having the support of those supervisors, mentors, your training director at your site, or whoever it may be, having supportive organizations like the Society for Black Neuropsychology, for example. Word of mouth it happens a lot. And so if you hear, oh, I just heard somebody was looking for something, that can be a very informal way for us to find out that there is an open position that just got funded. The pediatric neuropsych general listserv for those who are pediatrics, that one usually posts all the time. There's openings that are on there. There's also the more general sites as well. If you're part of your division memberships like Division 40, if you're part of WIN, if you're a woman in neuropsychology, for example, these are great listservs to be a part of because announcements are coming out through there and you can try to keep up to date on what's available. And I'll let someone else chime in now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those are great suggestions. And I think you've highlighted the general process. In the notes I sent, and it's nothing magical. It really just kind of summarizes some thoughts I had. First thing I noted was just to really lean into your village of mentors, your village of resources that you have, not only to get feedback, but also to use them to kind of work the network, because there are a lot of informal or new postdocs, as Dr. Butts mentioned, that come up. On the list I sent out are 3 places that you can go. One is the APIC list. The other is a listserv within Division 40. The third one is a little more novel, but our postdoc director here mentioned it as a place. It's the list of R01 researchers from NIH, because they can often write for Minority Supplement to fund the postdoc. And some of them are in the works, some of them, they just don't have the candidates, so they haven't written, but that's another listserv that you want to be on. You, as people have said, you really want to just cast a wide net and use the time between your reapplication, be it immediately or within a year, to also rework your cover letter. Look at objectively if there have been some gaps or some feedback that you've been able to glean from your sites, and try to address those in your cover letter, because that's what sites are really going to be looking for, is that you are still learning, still taking that feedback in.
And I see that someone in the comments asked of Dr. McBride or anyone else who is willing or able to answer, what did you do during that year after the match?
So yeah, I could definitely speak to that. So I definitely did everything that they suggested. I looked at the listservs. I went to my group of mentors to really evaluate, okay, what went wrong? Where were some missteps? What do I feel like I need to improve on? And I really did go after a number of fellowships. And like Dr. Butt said in the beginning, there were a number of fellowships that well-respected names that went unfilled. And, you know, I interviewed for some of them and it just didn't work out that way. So then I had to think about, okay, what is the next step? Well, the internship that I was at had a fellowship as well with it. And it was a VA. And I had a really great relationship with the training director, with all of the supervisors there. And I said, would it be possible for me to, in addition to fulfilling the requirements of this fellowship, carve out opportunities to incorporate neuropsychology and geropsychology opportunities in it? And they said, absolutely. So I stayed in the site where I was able to get more experience and really hone in on some of the skills, and thinking about how much better it made me prepared. I was in 5 different clinics in a week. So in terms of being prepared for what fellowships are going to be requesting, you know, they're going to want you to step in there really quickly and get up to speed with those report writing and seeing patients. I was able to handle that. And I felt confident in that ability to say, hey, I'm ready to step. I took an extra year just to prove that I'm really serious about this. And so that was kind of my experience, and the opportunities just kind of fell into place, and I'm here now. So it really, it was a sobering experience. It was hard to take that extra year because you're thinking about a 2-year fellowship. You're adding on an extra year for that. So it's like, oh my God, I don't want to be continuing this, but I was so happy that I did it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of that feedback. Let's see. We have another question in the chat that kind of piggybacks off what Dr. Butt mentioned. They ask, if I didn't match, is it okay for feedback to ask for feedback from the places I wasn't accepted to?
Absolutely. As I was saying earlier, I think it can be scary to put yourself out there and to reach out and ask for that feedback. But I feel like on the other side, when you are reaching out to places and you're speaking to the training staff at those sites, they are more than willing to discuss with you where is it that might have what might have happened, what you could be doing, and helping you think through that. As we've said before, sometimes people just don't match, it just doesn't work out. And it could not, it could be something that you didn't do, or it could be nothing that you weren't prepared for. And that reassurance from people outside of your network can also be helpful, ensuring for your, your mental state and for your ego and cheering up to move forward. But it can also be helpful if there is something that you probably haven't considered yet that is an objective opinion that can move you forward in a way that you might not have been prepared to before, and can really kind of launch you on in the continuing steps as you move forward in your path to becoming a neuropsychologist.
I want to follow Dr. Butt there and say, as a training director, I agree with that. I think it says a lot for trainees who do reach out and ask for feedback. It takes a lot to be vulnerable like that. So it says something about that person and the openness to hearing about that feedback. And I think if you reach out to multiple sites, it can be helpful to hear not just why is it that I didn't match to your particular site, but you can look for similar feedback that perhaps several training directors might be giving you to help you set goals for that next year until you reapply. I think especially if you made it to the interview process, that site is invested in you to some degree. They said, you're looking good, I'm going to give you an interview. And so if you ended up not matching, they might be very open to talking with you about why that wasn't. Just like Dr. Butt says, sometimes there is no reason, the match process just didn't work out. And then sometimes it could be that, your goals just didn't necessarily align with what the fellowship had to offer, or vice versa. So it can be really helpful to get feedback from others. Now, not all training directors may provide that feedback. Some may feel more comfortable than others, but it doesn't hurt to ask, to send a quick email.
Thank you all. That's very helpful insight. Shifting the topic a little bit. So it seems like the kind of interviews, offers, decisions to accept or decline positions all are happening very quickly after the formal match. I imagine it could be difficult to make quick decisions about whether to accept or decline offers, particularly if a site meets some of an individual's training goals, but not necessarily all of them. So could you speak a little bit to whether trainees are allowed to ask for time? For example, could they ask for 24 hours to make a decision, to consider the position before responding? Or are they likely to lose an offer if they attempt that? Or what's kind of the graceful way to navigate that part and make those decisions?
I can take a stab at answering that. I'm not a training director, but I've definitely been on interview panels for our postdoctoral fellowship at the Hospital for Sick Children. And first, I want to say that we've actually had some exceptional candidates come through sort of the second round, not matching, and it's been fantastic for both the trainee as well as for our site. But I think at this next stage, there is still that investment from both sides. So, we would not deter sort of on our side, like sort of asking for some time within limits, knowing that we may have multiple people, but asking for that time because we want to make sure that it's a good fit on both sides.
I'm open to adding that. I haven't actually been in that position just yet of an unmatched training director, but I would assume that it doesn't hurt to ask again, and just keeping in mind that the site is also in a similar situation. So just, being duly respectful of each other in that situation. Again, I don't think it hurts to ask at all in these types of situations, and don't go with something that you don't have a good feeling about. If you really don't see yourself at that site, then it may not be worth it to make a decision right then and there if you are under pressure and you don't have a good feeling.
All right. Well, thank you for that feedback. I know, and especially in times like this where it seems maybe like a frenzy to get any unfilled positions, it's nice to know that to allow yourself that breath to make sure that you're making a decision that's best for you and not a decision based on pressure. It can certainly feel like pressure. So in shifting in terms of thinking about, the decision between taking another year versus pursuing, fellowship, what considerations might lead you to opt for taking another year of training before fellowship? And in terms of Houston Conference guidelines, what requirements should one be looking for in a fellowship? So how can you confirm that a site conforms to the Houston guidelines, and what's important to keep in mind when considering future board certification? And also, can anyone speak to the negatives to taking another year?
I'll start the ball rolling just with a couple comments about evaluating the sites and the offers. There are two tiers I've seen interns seeking fellowships fall into if they don't match. The clear tier, the one that I think we're all invested in, are the ones that are reviewed and certified by AACC. And that is what you should look for if you have to do something that's kind of off the market, where your fellowship should be directed by a board certified neuropsychologist. That will get you a certain level of training, that will get you also the credentials when you go forward with boarding. In that moment of desperation, we've certainly, I think, all probably had to talk a few of the applicants down from maybe taking what is low-hanging fruit that may hurt them in the future, or not continue to develop their skills. Spend some time talking with your mentors and looking at the feedback if you're able to get that from sites, and just evaluate where they say you need to be and where you feel your skills are. And if that's something that you can reach through more experiences, it's only going to better you. I know another year when you're at the end of that tunnel and you see the light, you want to get out, is a long time. And I don't say this without kind of respect for that, but in terms of where it will help you develop, I think spending that year to continue to grow your skills will definitely pay off.
Dr. Williams? Oh, yeah,
Yes.
I was just about to say, Dr. Williams, would you like to chime in terms of our considerations for board certification? Thank you.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any negatives about it, like, other than I know that the 1 year but the other side of that is taking something that doesn't fit or doesn't meet Houston guidelines is actually could set you back longer in terms of meeting the requirements for board certification. And in thinking for this panel, really it's looking for sites, that are learning driven. It's not about your output that, I know we look for that in any site, but really it's about the learner. And that breadth that I think that Dr. McBride spoke about, in that we want to look for something that has the breadth of experiences and the temptation to take maybe as the low-hanging fruit that's, maybe a single diagnosis or a research postdoc where you're just doing protocol-driven assessments. They may be postdoc, but they may not meet the sort of criteria of breadth that you're going to need to provide in your application for board certification.
I would say from my experience, there was definitely an itch to take something because I felt like I needed to take something and to keep up with this trajectory of I gotta do this. But I agree with what everyone is saying in terms of I was still in the mindset of I need this training. I need the didactic experiences. I need the supervision. I need the mentorship to feel confident in my abilities to step out there as a future neuropsychologist. So I said, no, I can't do that just for the sake of continuing a timeline that I had for myself in my mind that I needed to do this right away. And so I would really encourage people to take time to really think about the training goals that you set out for yourself. And then, thinking about geographically, that there was things where it's like, okay, I'm going way across the country, and that was a factor in my consideration. So it's like, I don't want to just take anything that's not going to be in line with the values, all of them, or as many of them as I could meet as possible. So I definitely tell you, those out there to just really evaluate, write down a list of the pros and cons, and think about what is it that you're really trying to achieve here.
I agree with everything that's been said. And I think, especially now in light of our current pandemic, which we do have to consider different geographic areas, people are in the office or they're practicing in different ways. And I think that trainees, as you're thinking about what to do in your year, whether to resist the low-hanging fruit, as everyone is saying, one of the things that I find as a training director, people who take a year off really make sure that they finish their dissertation. They use that time to publish that or make some scholarly productivity with their dissertation, in addition to shoring up any gaps in knowledge. So functional neuroanatomy, for example, and really taking benefit of the didactics that are nationwide. And nowadays we have a lot of free online didactics that are happening. I feel like there is a great opportunity for continued learning and continued experience, as Dr. McBride was saying. And you can set yourself back, as Dr. Williams was saying, if your ultimate goal is to be board certified in neuropsychology, you do have to go through that specific critique of, is this site going to meet my ultimate goals, not my immediate goal of, if I had a site right now, it would feel better. And I feel like I'm matched, but is this going to meet my long-term goals of what I want to do?
I can just add one comment. Address these issues in your cover letter. Own your narrative, as our friends in media would say, because the people reviewing your application are going to see it. And if you say, yes, this was a humbling experience, but this is what I've done in the year, it stands out.
Thank you so much for that incredible advice. I think Dr. Costello is going to move us right along to our next topic.
Sure, yes, thank you. Those are all such good points. I think we've been talking a lot about turning to mentors. Sorry, I've got dogs in the back if you can hear them. Turning to mentors during this time and kind of figuring out how to fill gaps of knowledge, gaps in training in order to really make yourself competitive for the next step. So I want to kind of talk a little bit more about the mentor piece. So some of our applicants who didn't match may already be connected to an identified mentor, but some may not be. There are some specific mentorship programs through SBN and some other neuropsych organizations that I think Dr. McBride will discuss a little bit later. But for our panelists, how would you encourage trainees to rely on their mentors during this post-match phase and beyond? What kinds of questions do you think they should be asking of their mentors? Or if they don't have a mentor already, how do you recommend that they identify one?
The AACN Student Affairs Committee has a mentorship program in which the trainees will get hooked up with a mentor who is board certified. And I think that's really important because the person has been through the whole same process and is familiar with what it entails to become board certified. So that's one way to go. There's also a lot of directions you can go to get informal mentorship. Maybe if there are people from your graduate program who have successfully made it through fellowship or matched to fellowship, if you have contact with them still, get a hold of them, see if they can help mentor you through the process. Even other fellow interns who did match can be informal mentors. I think even, if you reach out to a site that you really had hoped to match with, just asking them, in sort of an informal mentorship sort of way. It may not be an ongoing relationship, but asking them, what is it that your most competitive candidates have or did, or do you have any advice specifically? So just being open and vulnerable again, I think will serve you best, and asking for advice in all different directions and building your network as much as you can.
And just to echo on that, the Board Certification Promotion Committee also has regional reps, so they can also pair board certified neuropsychologists in your community that you may never have met. And even if you don't practice in the same area, pediatric, it may provide a little of, that just mentorship that you're looking for. And sometimes that external or new voice can be really powerful.
I think especially with, this past year, that a lot of the, with how virtual we've all become, that there are a lot of mentorship opportunities with folks from all over the country, which is really beneficial to see. Dr. Anderson, did you want to move to the next part, or I'm checking the chat here as well?
Yeah, so actually, I think this is a great time to open up our Q&A to our viewers. And I can get us started off with the first question. I believe Phaedra Boyd, we spoke a bit to this, but if there's a fellowship that isn't exactly what you want, should you take it just to get it done with? And I know we've covered that a bit, but if anyone would like to help Phaedra out.
And
I would say prioritize if it's going to meet your needs. So if it's going to meet your overall needs, then I would say it's definitely worth considering. If it's not going to meet your needs, and that's why it's not exactly what you want, then I would really encourage you, like everyone has already been saying, to give yourself permission to press pause and stop and go through that exercise of really thinking through before you do a knee-jerk reaction and take that site.
Agreed. The other potential side of this question is a construct that we don't hear a lot about in graduate training, but to maybe empower the trainee coming to the end of their time here, is that might be an opportunity for negotiation. You have to have a pretty objective list of what you need, and they are going to capitalize on your skills and your knowledge. And if you need some training, some didactics, that's the point where you can engage in that discussion. It will probably give you immediate feedback of their value they have for you, and then you can make that an informed decision after that process. That will happen as you move on to jobs, as you move on throughout your career, but it's something we don't often do. We kind of take what's offered, and I think that's an empowerment step that we need to do a better job in with our training.
There's another question in the Q&A here. Do you recommend working as a neuropsychology technician, or what could be other financially minded training opportunities that could prepare you in areas of need, for example, assessment for next year's match?
I'm sure there's an economic need to pay the bills, and I'm not going to be the person that says don't do what you need to do. But I think, like a lot of the comments we've had, you should spend that year filling the gaps. And I'm assuming if you're leaving an APA accredited internship, you probably are pretty good with tests and administration. So there may be some other areas based on that feedback that you can shore up there. But certainly if you have that opportunity and you need that to survive, I'm not saying don't do it, but think critically about those other steps.
And that might be a point for negotiation, as Dr. Didi was saying, because if it's a site that you can work with the primary neuropsychologist or neuropsychologists who are performing the assessments that you would be teching for, maybe they would be open to you taking more of a role. So your base role would be a technician, but maybe on select cases, maybe it's populations that you have not had as much experience with. So for epilepsy pre-surgicals, you may be able to be involved in the conceptualization and perhaps some of the write-up. That would be a great way to pay your bills and do what you need to do, but then also shoring up some of those gaps as well. So I agree with what the other panelists are saying about negotiating having a good idea of what your true objective needs assessment is, and then making it work for you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So our next question, someone mentioned that they thought that the AACN mentorship program was only available to those who were already at their phase where they've passed their credential review. Just to clarify, you can participate even if you reach that, before you reach that stage?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there are, parts of the ACN like brain, which are specific to the components of the application and to the exams and then that preparation. But, the purpose of the regional reps is really across the pipeline. So it's so just to correct that certainly there are members, myself, I represent sort of like Ontario, and are here for like PhD students, like all along the pipeline. So there are resources. I think there are specific some matching through brain, and there's groups and study groups that are more specific to people on that later in the path. But there are opportunities for mentorship and support along the path.
Reaching out to those mentors may be a mechanism to answer the chat question about creating a postdoc within a private practice. That is more difficult. You're going to have a lot more dots to connect when you review your credentials, but you could reach out to an ABCN mentor to see what a postdoc should be structured, what things should be included, and essentially have that contracted with the person you're maybe working with in private practice. And they may not be able to check all the boxes, and you kind of have to decide if it's still going to be a value-added experience for you. But getting the structure could probably come from consulting one of those mentors.
Mm-hmm. And also you can consult with someone on the ABCN panel. And in terms of, I remember even when I was applying, because I went through sort of a Houston Conference B model, and you want to make sure, that you're all you're out. So I would definitely recommend that if that is the route you're taking, and then also keeping a paper trail, because members change. And if you are sort of trying to check off these boxes, having someone in addition to mentorship, but just also say like, this is going to, yes or no, be likely to go through the application process, and what would be missing. Because I agree what was just said in terms of sometimes private practices can't check off all the didactic enrichment that you would get in the postdoctoral fellowship, but that's not to say that maybe some of those things can be negotiated, or affiliations with local hospitals could be set up. But certainly having someone from ACN, but someone on the ABCN adjudication panel would be something to vet talk through your opportunities for what you're considering for this year.
Checking to see if there are any other questions in the chat that haven't been answered yet. I believe someone had also previously asked about what the rates of match versus non-match were this year, if anyone could speak to that, if we haven't already.
I can speak to that. This year was very similar to previous years, at least the past 2 or 3 previous years, we're told. And so the expected impact from COVID really didn't come through, which is great. I think the virtual recruitment really helped. There were about 30% of applicants who did not match, which is pretty similar to most years, where 70% are matching and 30% are not matching.
All right, thank you. So some other potential questions that we've had before was, would you need to have a neuropsych internship to secure a neuropsych fellowship? And what about an internship that doesn't meet Houston Conference guidelines? Does that put you at a disadvantage when pursuing fellowship?
I'll take a stab at that one. I think every situation is different. And so it's kind of hard to answer that for all circumstances. I think that most absent fellowships will be looking at people who have had a neuropsych-focused internship, to be honest. But you pick up your neuropsych experience from your doctoral practicum experiences all the way through fellowship, and every candidate is different, and every site is different in what they offer. Some sites, they may be able to take candidates who have had, maybe not as strong experience because they have the time and the capabilities to be able to get you to where you need to be. Other sites may not have that capability. So that's why it's a little hard to answer that, very broadly. But I think for most sites, you're going to be needing to have some neuropsych on internship for certain. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that.
I would just reiterate, I think it is so different, but at the same time, you want some form of neuropsychological intensive training within your internship. That being said, we would, the clinical breadth that working with, from a more clinical perspective is obviously part of our training, and it's part of the Houston guidelines. So it's not that we want, postdoctoral fellowships aren't all about looking for people that have only done neuropsychology, like only done assessment and no intervention. So I think that the internship, in some ways, you have some flexibility that it doesn't have to be 100% neuropsychology focused. But at the same time, it would probably be rare that fellowship training directors would be looking at people who came from just more of a clinical training that all of a sudden wanted to transition to neuropsychology.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. I'm going to look one more time, see if we have any additional questions in our chat. Okay. Looks like we answered pretty much most of the questions that were asked or that we got from previously from people who were interested in knowing more about this process, which is pretty good since we have about 8 minutes left. All right. So at this time, it might be a good time to segue into talking more. So earlier we talked about the mentorship opportunities, and I know Dr. McBride and Dr. Dugan will be able to tell us more specifically about the mentorship opportunities in SBN and ANST respectively. So Dr. McBride, if you would like to tell us more about the mentorship opportunities in SBN.
Yeah, so I am kind of heading that along with some other neuropsychology trainees, and we developed this program. It's our inaugural year, so we're very excited about it. We have a number of mentors, so we're going to be providing mentorship to trainees who are in all phases. So first year students, all the way up to fellows and even early career, if that's where you are in your stage of training. We want it to be interactive. We're leaving it open for the mentee and the mentor to iron out what goals they have. Everybody's mentorship or training needs is going to be different. So we keep that in mind. But we also want to be able to provide webinars. So in this past year, we have done a lot of webinars on, being a good applicant for internships and how to prepare for fellowships, how to talk about, letter writing and those types of things. So we're going to be doing more of that, but we're also going to be adding a component of having a reservoir of resources. So we're basically going to have letters to look at as for sampling, cover letters, how to write up a research grant, how to do those things to prepare for all phases of your PhD program, but also geared towards neuropsychology. So we're very excited about that. We are accepting mentees now. I think this might be our last week. So if you want to be a mentee, if you know anybody that should be in this program, we're very excited to have them in our SBN program. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McBride. And I also believe Dr. Dugan is with us. Oh, before we bring in Dr. Dugan, there was one question. How do you sign up for the mentorship program, Dr. McBride?
Yes, absolutely. So on our Society for Black Neuropsychology.org, you become a member. There is a suggested price for membership for each level, so student, associate, or professional memberships. So we definitely want you to sign up. You have to be a member of SBN to be a part of the membership program. So you can do that. You can find us on Twitter, So Black Neuro, or at So Black Neuro. We have a Facebook page as well. We have an Instagram page also. And we have a listserv. So if you go to our main website at www.societyforblackneuropsychology.org, you'll be able to find all of those connections that you can make. So there's a form. It's a Google Doc form. It's very simple. Just ask a lot of demographic questions about where you're at in your training career. What are your goals and your interests? What are some things that we can look for in a mentor that would align with where you are? And as simple as that. And we're doing the matching process soon. So we hope to be, finishing that up so that they can get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. McBride. And Dr. Dugan, there you are. She's joining us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us to tell us about the wonderful opportunities available at ANST.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And we're so happy to partner with the Society for Black Neuropsychology. It's always a great partnership, and I think we have done a lot of amazing work for the last year together. The ANST stands for the Association for Neuropsychology Students and Trainees, and it's the trainee division of APA's Division 40, the Society for Clinical Neuropsychology. And it's the largest neuropsychology student trainee organization in North America, and we have a wealth of resources here to support you. So to be a member, all you need to do is join SCN Division 40 by going to their website and following the instructions. And to be a trainee, even if you're at the postdoc level, it's $10. And once you sign up and you're a member of SCN, you're a member of ANST. And that means that you can get on the ANST list. And that's really important because we work really, really, really hard for you guys and ANST to try to collate and bring to you all of those announcements from all across all the different listservs into one place for all of the position openings. And you'll see as even now, we continue to post new information about postdocs that are opening up, as well as kind of non-traditional paths. There's a lot of times research opportunities that I'm posting, but a lot of people don't realize that there's room to negotiate for clinical opportunities within a research position. So definitely take a look at if something feels like it might be a good fit for you, take a closer look, ask questions, and follow up on those opportunities. In addition to the ANTS listserv, we are very active on Twitter also, and you would be surprised at all the different opportunities that come across Twitter. So if you don't have a professional Twitter, I would say that's a good place to jump in and start kind of getting your feet wet in that, because you can learn of things very rapidly, of different opportunities, and making connections with people. I also want to highlight some other resources that can be available to you. Through SCN, there's the Education Advisory Committee. And if you go to their website, they have a few very critical documents that are important for you to review as you're moving forward in this step of your training, including the taxonomy on education in neuropsychology, which is kind of like a supplement to the Houston Conference guidelines that shows how you can apply those guidelines to what you need to actually ask for in terms of your postdoctoral position. It's the nuts and bolts of, at a minimum, what do you need to have executed, and what does your training plan need to look like in order to document the things that you need to become a board certified neuropsychologist later on. So there's a few different documents on that website that I highly recommend that you download and review, because that will help you in making decisions about if a site is a good fit for you or not. The Education Advisory Committee also has kind of a one-time consultation type of deal that they offer. So if you just need kind of advice from somebody for like a one-time thing, often I get people emailing ANTS or emailing the Education Advisory Committee to get resources. If you're wanting somebody who's more supportive and you can have mentorship over time, the AACN Student Advisory Committee, or the SAC, is where you're going to go for that mentorship opportunity that people are talking about. And that is a little different than BRAIN. So you're looking for SAC, not brain, if you're planning for boards. And the last thing I'll highlight is a lot of people were mentioning things about free didactics, and I will shamelessly plug one that I'm involved in as well as Dr. McBride, is called Know Neuropsychology, KNOW, neuropsych.org. And it's basically an organization that several of us early career and late trainee neuropsychology people have put together to fill the void in your didactic training. The pandemic is hard. It's making things difficult, but also it's good that we're realizing that training doesn't have to be just at your site. And this is giving us the opportunity to really open it up into lots of things. And we are getting so much feedback from training directors and other places saying that so many of their applicants have put on their CVs that they've been supplementing their training with attending didactic series like Know Neuropsychology. And Know Neuropsychology tries to address things like this. We have upcoming series about kind of career paths in neuropsychology and having different panelists talk about all the different routes they take. So there's no one route to being a neuropsychologist. So please rest assured that there's a lot of resources there to support you. We hope to see you involved in all of the organizations and using the resources, and know that there's a really strong community here to support you.
Can I just add a little plug here for APSIN's multi-site didactic initiative? Know Neuropsych has been phenomenal, and I have to say, all of us, even the neuropsychologists, have benefited from those didactics. And the APSIN MDI is going to get they posted a lot of talks last year, and it's going to get revived soon. So that'll be another resource. We're pairing up with the Student Affairs Committee from AACN to get that up and going. So it's not just available to the APSIN fellowships, but also to interns and doctoral students too. So lots of resources out there.
I think you're muted, Dr. Ray.
I'm so happy that we have our Brady Bunch here today and that everyone was able to give such valuable resources and give us just such great information. This was definitely needed. I have seen people just comment about how they thought that this was a valuable resource. When we sent out the flyer, people were excited for it. So even if you are watching this on a rewatch, we want you to make sure that you share it with other people who you feel might be interested in hearing all of the wonderful information that was presented, from the emotional piece of it to the very technical and practical pieces of it. I want to thank Dr. McBride, Dr. Sheafs, Dr. Didi, Dr. Butt, Dr. Williams, and of course, thank you to our moderators, Dr. Anderson and Dr. Costello, for making sure that we had this great panel and that you kept it running well and got all the comments and questions in record time. And of course, thank you always to Dr. Dugan for having ANTS partner with SBN all of the time. Our partnerships are always so valuable to our membership and to the larger membership of neuropsychologists and trainees. Thank you all so much for being here. And before we leave, are there any other closing comments that anybody had that they would like to share as we wrap up? Don't all speak at once, you guys.
I think someone earlier said it best when they said, keep moving forward. So I always love that movie, Meet the Robinsons, and that's the mantra of the movie, keep moving forward. So I would just keep saying that to yourselves.
There you go. Dr. Didi, anything that you wanted to add?
I like where we are. I think we've generated a lot of good resources. Hopefully people have felt the support, and again, there's a village out there to help. So this is a great idea, and I think, again, I appreciate the invitation to be part of it.
Right, and just as a reminder, Dr. D, as was said before, has given us some resources that he's actually compiled as a Word document. If anybody is interested in getting that list of resources, please do email sbn@soblackneuro@gmail.com. We'll send that out to you. We'll be sending that actually on our listserv as well. So if you're already a part of the listserv, you will be getting that shortly. Dr. Sheese, anything that you wanted to share with us?
I don't think so. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Dr. Williams, any last words?
Thank you very much. This has been wonderful. And I guess I would just share, this is such a marvelous community. And, I know there's bumps in the road, but it is about just moving forward and the rewards and the joy along the way. I just keep that in mind. Thank you.
And Dr. McBride, anything that you wanted to say?
Nothing that hasn't already been echoed. Just don't lose sight of your goals. And it may seem overwhelming in the moment, but you can get past this. And grad school is a lot of hoop jumping, and this is just one other hurdle that is going to be a part of the growth story at the end. So just keep that in mind and just try to do a little reframing on yourself. Use some of those psychology techniques we learned, and then try to put it in a different perspective. And I think you will be able to find that, okay, I can keep going after this.
Awesome. So thank you so much to all of our panelists for just all of the things that they were able to share with us this evening. To our moderators, I just once again thank you guys so much for being great moderators. As we close out, are there things that you guys want to say as we conclude?
I'll also just echo, I think that this is really valuable. I hope that applicants found it helpful, and just kind of thinking of it from, I guess, an acceptance and commitment therapy frame, and that setting those values and relying on mentors to make sure that your next decisions are kind of acts that are moving you towards those values in terms of professional development and your ultimate goals.
Absolutely. I'll echo that. And I'm just incredibly grateful for the amazing lineup we were able to pull together for this panel. I'm so grateful for their feedback and advice and mentorship for our viewers at this time. So thank you so much to them. And I think that's it.
All right. One last thing, Dr. Dugan, can you just let us know one last time, how do we make sure that we get all of the ANTS resources and get on the ANTS listserv?
Yes, please be on the ANTS listserv. It's easy to do. All you have to do is go to scn40.org and look at the membership information and just become a member of SCN. Once you're a member, you can go to the ANTS page and request, it's through your portal, list.apa.org, where you sign up to join the Division 40 ANTS list. And we're happy to have any and all people as a member of our group. And even if you're kind of viewing this video later on, in preparation for the future, and you're worried about not matching down the road, or things like that, know that ANTS really supports people all through the postdoc process. Or if you weren't part of the list and you decide that you want to go back and apply again next year, be part of the list and be on the lookout, because we really jump over hoops to make sure that we're trying to share as many postdoc opportunities with our trainees as possible. So if you're not on it, you're missing out, and we have lots to offer.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And once again, thanks again for all of you who are watching this. Go to societyforblackneuropsychology.org, sign up to be a member of SBN. Make sure that you get all of our information via our listserv. Just ask to be a part of our listserv. You can email us anytime at soblackneuro@gmail.com. And also make sure that you like this video, that you share it with somebody that you think needs to hear this, and also subscribe to our channel so that you're able to get more content whenever we do other trainings and webinars like this. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.